G'day YouTube viewers, g'day bikers. Talking about another topic that really interests me today, is the market for retro motorcycles changing? To me, the first modern classics such as Kawasaki's W650 and Triumph's reintroduction at the Bonneville initially looked like bikes of the 50s and 60s with their pea-shooter exhaust and styling that was heavily influenced by the golden era of British bikes. Although some would say the W650 and later the W800 were based on earlier W-series bikes from Kawasaki that were around in the 1960s, there is no doubt those original Japanese bikes were still influenced by the British design language prevalent in the 1950s. But my question is demand for motorcycles in the retro segment starting to shift more towards the Japanese style bikes of the late 70s and early 80s? In Australia, I think that is the case, which is why the Z900RS, Z650RS and CB350R have been selling so well here. I think in the UK it might be slightly different though, because of the heritage and history of the great British bike era. So Royal Enfields, with their pea-shooter exhausts and slightly different body shapes, are going to continue to sell well in homage to what was part of the great British industrial age. I could be completely wrong, of course. All I know is when I was growing up, I was heavily influenced by the Japanese bikes from the early 70s, such as Honda's CB series and Kawasaki's Z series, which is why I presently own a Kawasaki Z900RS and Honda GB350R, because their styling reminds me of many of those bikes I remember, and one day dreamed of owning. It is one of the reasons why I haven't yet bought a Royal Enfield. I'm not saying I won't, it's just because I don't relate as much to how they look. The only one that does give me the 70s vibe is the Interceptor, which has a different shape, particularly the exhaust system. But in saying that, I have contradicted myself with my purchase last year of a Heritage Classic, which is based on a classic style bike of the late 50s. I think the difference though is that Harley-Davidsons have always been very popular in Australia, and there were many bikes in that classic 50s and 60s style around when and where I grew up in the country. So I relate to them more than the British bikes from that era. I'm sure in the cities though there were many British bikes around at that time, but I didn't see them in the country area where I live, so my observation might not only be very personal but unique. Which is why I'm asking the question about whether the retro market is changing. One other reason could be the age of active riders. Those who rode bikes in the 50s and 60s would now be in their late 70s and 80s, where most mature riders today are more likely to be in their 50s, 60s and early to mid 70s, so they in turn would be more influenced by bikes of the 1970s and 80s. But I guess that doesn't explain why Triumph Bonnevilles and Royal Enfield Classics and Bullets are still being bought by younger riders. My observation though, from what I see on the road, is that I think that is slowly changing, and younger riders wanting some heritage styling are not looking as far back with that influence. Which may be why I think sales are starting to shift more towards bikes like the Speed Twin, Speed 400, GB350, Hunter 350, Bear 650, Z900RS, Z650RS, and the even more recently styled XSR 900 GP, which has a design based more on Yamaha's race bike from the early 90s. Anyway, what do you think? What do you look for in a modern classic, and what are the main influences behind that? It will be really interesting to read your thoughts and maybe do a follow-up video on this subject. And finally, based on what I've observed, I think Honda should have released the GB350C, which is now available in Australia, in the UK and Europe at the same time as the GB350S. Because I think it would be even more popular there, with riders particularly in the UK wanting to pay tribute to the motorcycle styling from the heyday of the great British biking industry of the late 1950s and early 60s. Anyway, this is all food for thought. Thanks for watching. If you thought this video was okay, please give it a like, and if you'd like to be alerted to more content like this, haven't done so already, it's free to subscribe, and I would love you to join me on my YouTube biking journey. Have a fantastic day and happy riding.